How difficult is chiropractic school? I'm Dr. Anthony Davis. I'm going to tell you all about how difficult it is to be in and how to get in to chiropractic school. Is it worth it? In this video, I'll talk about prereqs and entrance requirements. I'll give you an idea of what the curriculum and course load is like. How do you pay for it? And can you work while you're in school? How difficult are the exams? How much do you have to study to pass them? What about chiropractic school compared to PT school or medical school? Which one's harder? And then who should or shouldn't consider going to chiropractic school and why? And really, is it worth it? Let's get to it. Hey, real quick, if you have any questions about chiropractic school, please leave them in the comments. Let's talk about prereqs and entrance requirements. All of the information I'm presenting in this video is mostly going to pertain to the United States-based schools, although many of the schools that are abroad have very similar requirements. First off, do you need a bachelor's degree? And for some schools, the answer will be yes. Most people that enter chiropractic school will have completed a bachelor's degree. And at a minimum, you must have completed 90 semester credits at a bachelor's degree level. That is going to be similar for most schools, but again, some schools do require a full bachelor's degree. More specifically, you will be required to have 24 semester credits in the life sciences. So that's going to include things like general chemistry, anatomy, physiology, biology, those types of things. I also saw several of my classmates who were actually completing their bachelor's degree at the same time as completing the doctoral degree in chiropractic. So they were dual enrolled, they finished so that when they graduated, they had graduated with both their bachelor's and their doctoral degree. As for grades, most schools will want to see a minimum cumulative GPA from your undergrad of a 3.0 or higher, although exceptions are frequently made for slightly lower GPAs. And as for competitiveness, if you meet all of these requirements, it is pretty much guaranteed that you are going to get accepted to the program. The chiropractic programs simply are not nearly as competitive as things like PT school or medical school. So if you meet the requirements, you'll probably get in. Now let's talk about the curriculum and course load overall. Most schools will be broken down either into trimesters or quarters. I'm going to talk about trimesters, but everything pretty much applies to both programs because at the end of the day, all of these chiropractic programs are doctoral degrees that will last approximately 3.5 years. My school was broken into trimesters and we had 10 total trimesters with no breaks, no summer vacation, nothing. And each trimester was a full course load. So we began with around 22 to 27 credit hours, which those credit hours are not inflated really. A 4 credit class or a 5 credit class in my chiropractic curriculum felt very much like a 4 or 5 credit class in my undergrad in terms of the amount of studying that I had to do. To give you an idea of what it looks like in the curriculum, you're gonna have a lot of classes that you're not expecting. So most people think about chiropractic practice and they think about cracking backs. So you might expect, oh, we're gonna learn some anatomy, we're gonna learn some things about movement and that kind of thing. Well, hold on to your seats because you're gonna learn to be a doctor. And to do that, you need to know everything about human anatomy, physiology, biology, biochemistry, embryology, histology, microbiology, infectious disease, pathology, pathophysiology, clinical pathology. I mean, it goes on and on and on and on and on. You're gonna take a lot of classes. You're gonna have a class for every single organ system, right? So you are going to learn everything about the human body and how to diagnose and treat or refer when appropriate. So as an example, your first trimester might look something like this. You might have biochemistry, anatomy, histology, infection control, managing finances, so that's like a business class, methods 1, which is introducing you to the idea of using your hands and applying some kind of manual therapy, principles in philosophy, which is more like a history class about the history of the profession, skeletal radiology, spine and pelvis, and foundations of integrative care. That's a sample curriculum from the first trimester at the school I went to, which was Northwestern Health Sciences University in Minnesota. All told, that would break down to 22.95, basically 23 credit hours. Some of those classes, like infection control, is 0.2 credits, so it's pretty much a throwaway class. If you show up, you get 100. It's easy, right? Now, some of those classes, like Gross Anatomy 1, also has a lab component. You're dissecting human bodies in most schools, although some schools are transitioning to electronic versions where you don't deal with actual cadavers. But in general, you're going to have a few really heavy-hitting classes in every trimester. So that biochemistry, the anatomy, the spine and pelvis, those classes are going to be more robust, and histology. So those are going to be some difficult classes you will definitely need to study, but the other ones, foundations of integrative care, they probably have a couple of projects for you to do, maybe some group assignments. If you just do them, you're going to get an A. So you might feel overwhelmed thinking, oh, that's 10 different classes. You're taking 10 classes in that one trimester. Well, half of them are throwaway classes. You show up, you're gonna get 100. Well, maybe not 100, but you show up, you're gonna pass the class. Some of the classes that you might not expect to see in a chiropractic curriculum that might surprise you are things, a lot of neurology, a lot of neurodiagnosis. We have a full year of clinical nutrition. We've got clinical pathology. We have classes for every major organ system. So eyes, ears, nose, and throat, that's a whole class. We've got a whole class for gastrointestinal and genitourinary and men's health. We've got a whole class for women's health. We've got a whole class for dermatology, a whole class for endocrinology. And this may surprise you, but depending on the state you're in, you may be drawing blood. You may be learning how to do venipuncture. We practice on each other. It's part of the requirements if you live in a state where chiropractors are allowed to do venipuncture. Because yes, it is in the scope of practice for chiropractors to draw blood for laboratory analysis. This is because in most states, chiropractors are considered primary care physicians in the state statutes. Now, most chiropractors don't practice that way, partially because the insurance companies don't reimburse for it, and partially because they're more interested in doing other types of more musculoskeletal practices dealing with pain and injuries. But again, I want to emphasize that you are learning to become a doctor. You're learning to diagnose and treat disease. So you need to know all of this stuff. And a lot of people don't really understand that coming into school. They think, oh, we're just here to crack backs. But that is a very small portion of what you're learning throughout the curriculum. Okay, so how do you pay for it? Well, most people will take out government loans because when you're in grad school, the government will, especially when you're in a doctoral program, the government will loan you a whole bunch of money, including not just paying for tuition, but also paying additional money for you to pay your rent and eat while you're in school, so that you do not have to work while you're in school. So can you work while you're in school? Well, I do know several of my former classmates who worked while they were in school, but the only way to do that is that you split your trimesters, meaning maybe let's say that a certain trimester would normally be 27 credits. Well, maybe you only take 18 of those credits and you delay taking those additional courses. So instead of graduating in 3.5 years, it might take you 4 or maybe even 5 years to graduate because you do it slower. That allows you more time to work while you're in school, which can be a great option if you are trying to minimize the debt that you want to repay, which is a great strategy because the debt is overwhelming. Most chiropractic graduates are graduating with close to $250,000 in student debt because they have to pay for the tuition and they can't really work while they're in school. So the only way to work while you're in school is to take a lighter course load. I don't think I could have worked and taken the normal course load. I maybe would have passed my classes. I certainly would not have done well in my classes. Now let's talk about the exams. How difficult are the exams and how much do you have to study? Well, In my experience with chiropractic school, I think the exams were fairly similar to any hard science that I had to take in undergrad. So I remember my general chemistry, my biology, your anatomy, your physiology, those kinds of classes in undergrad. And I felt like the amount of studying that I did for any of those exams was pretty similar to the amount of studying that I did for the anatomy or the clinical pathology or any of those more difficult classes in the chiropractic curriculum. So personally, I had really bad studying habits because I was a terrible student my whole life. I was a really bad student, especially in high school. I never showed up to class. I had no study habits. I barely scraped by and graduated. And in college, up until the last year or so, I was not a good student. I kind of dropped out for a while, got back into school, dropped out, got back into school. Only at the very end did I start taking hard science classes and start taking education seriously. So I had no study habits. I'm sure if I had a lifetime of study habits in place, then this would have been much easier. But I had to learn how to even study while also learning the course material. So that was very difficult for me. I felt like it took pretty much all of my time. Personally, I did not have much of a social life during school. And part of that was because I don't like going out. I don't drink, I don't do drugs, I don't do any of that. I'm totally sober. So I didn't really like going out with some of my classmates. A lot of my classmates were very frequently going out to the bars and partying and all that. I didn't really do that because I don't like it. But even if I had done that, obviously people were able to do that type of thing and they still passed their classes. I don't know how, because I felt like I was studying all the time and I didn't even party. I got pretty good grades. I graduated magna cum laude, so I mean, not the top of my class, but I did really well. And again, I was studying pretty much all the time. I will say though, I had time to organize. I ran 2 student clubs while I was in school, and I was running my own business online, making these videos, etc. So I suppose if I hadn't had all of that going on, I probably would have had a little more free time. So I guess studying in and of itself just to pass my classes would have left me maybe a little bit of free time, but not much. Now let's compare chiropractic school to PT school and medical school. First of all, I have a video that already compares these in way greater detail, so go watch that if you really want a better breakdown comparing chiropractic to different curriculums. But for this purpose, I just want to say, essentially, the time is longer than PT school, but it's shorter than medical school. So PT school usually lasts about 2.5 years. Our program is 3.5 years. Medical school is about 4 years, plus residency, and you might do a fellowship after that. So medical school definitely takes a lot more time. Let's talk about competitiveness. As for getting into the programs, it's way easier to get into chiropractic school than it is PT school or medical school. Those programs are both very popular, and just by virtue of being very popular, they're very competitive. It's just not as popular to become a chiropractor, so it's less competitive and they accept most people that meet the requirement. What about actual hours of education? So there are some charts floating around comparing chiropractic school to medical school because we both graduate as doctors and we're both allowed to diagnose and treat, and we're both considered primary care physicians. I think that can be a little bit misleading. Some of these charts are showing that chiropractors have more education than medical students. Now, again, I think that's misleading because what these charts say, for example, is that if you compare the classroom hours in chiropractic school to med school, the chiropractors get a little over 3,000 hours, and the medical students get about 2,700 classroom hours. And then if you compare the total amount of hours spent either classroom or clinical, you might see that chiropractors get about 4,700 hours and medical students get about 4,550, so a little bit less than us. That I think is really misleading because medical students also have to complete a residency, and those residencies are insane amounts of hours. We don't have to do a residency. You can do one, but it's going to be nowhere near as intense as a medical school, as a medical residency. There's no way, there's no comparison. They definitely have it harder. So any attempt to make us look like we do more education, like we have more education, I think that's misleading. Even if we do technically have more classroom hours, which I guess we do, but trust me, their program is harder. Like, for example, if we just compared apples to apples, taking a biochemistry class in chiropractic school compared to the same biochemistry class, because we both have to take that in medical school, their medical school curriculum is going to basically just make you memorize more biochemical pathways. We just don't have to get into as great of detail for some of these things. So same class, theirs is harder. Now let's talk about, is it worth it? Well, the short answer is, if I would go back and do it again, would I still choose chiropractic school? And I would. I have my gripes. I've got plenty of gripes with chiropractic school and the profession as a whole, but I still would do it because it allows me the freedom to do everything that I want to do as a healthcare provider. I don't personally want to be performing surgery, for example. I don't want to be prescribing any kind of drugs or medications. So not that I have anything against those things. They're totally fine and necessary sometimes. I just don't want to do it. So I don't want to have to go through the headache of having to learn what it would be required to do those things if I'm not interested in doing it in the first place. So I don't want that education. Our scope of practice as chiropractors is pretty sweet. We can diagnose and treat. We can really make a lot of difference with pain and injury and rehabilitation and lifestyle interventions. We can teach people how to take care of themselves. So I think that's pretty cool. That said, it should be noted that the amount of debt that we get into compared to the salary that we earn on average it doesn't make any sense financially. So for the same amount of debt to become a medical doctor, you're gonna make more money. Hands down, you're gonna make way more money as a medical doctor. And you'll probably make more money as a physical therapist, or at least it's gonna be easier to find a job that can scale your income gradually over time because PTs are better accepted into the general community at large. So a lot of chiropractors are kind of forced to start their own businesses. So if you're not business minded, if you are planning on working for somebody else, maybe chiropractic isn't your thing because it might set you down the path of entrepreneurship, and maybe that's not your bag. So if you've shadowed a chiropractor in your area a lot, and you've shadowed a few different ones to see what it's like to actually live a day in the life, and you really like what they do, and you really want to be able to provide that, and that's the scope of practice you want, and this is the education you want. I did it because I wanted to learn more about overall health and be able to teach people how to take care of themselves. And I didn't think that PT gave me enough of the broad picture of health. I thought they were a little bit more focused on musculoskeletal injuries and rehab. And we just get a little bit more like clinical nutrition, that kind of stuff, lifestyle interventions. And our scope of practice in some states is a little better. So that's why I liked chiropractic over PT, and then medical school is just a bunch of stuff that I don't care to learn. So don't do it for the money, do it because you really enjoy the idea of being a chiropractor and you've shadowed people who are doing exactly what you want to do. If so, if you've got the passion, it can be a great career path. Thank you for watching. I'm Dr. Anthony Davis. If you have questions, leave them in the comments. As always, remember that motion is lotion, movement is medicine, so move your body every single day.